proper role of scientists in a pandemic is to answer basic questions that policymakers have about what the right policy should be. Our role isn't to make decisions to say you shouldn't be saying goodbye to your grandfather as he's dying in a hospital. It shouldn't be to say you can't have a funeral because it's too dangerous. The scientists should say, here's what the risks are. And then you decide what the risk, whether you take it. The role of the scientist shouldn't be to say you can't send your kids to school for 2 years, that you can't you should close hospitals so that they can't treat heart attack patients. That you should not the role of scientists should be to address those problems by giving good data, and then let people make the science should be an engine for freedom. Knowledge and freedom, not something where it stands on top of society and says you must do this, this, and this, or else. It shouldn't be pushing mandates for vaccines that have been like the COVID vaccines that were tested for a relatively short period of time. I took the COVID vaccine myself, but I think that the mandates that many scientists push have led to the lack of confidence that so many of the public has in science. If science is a force for freedom and for knowledge, it will have universal support. That's what the role of science is.
I love Jay. I can't believe he's there. I'm so excited about it. Joining me now, Dr. Simone Gold, author of the book Selective Persecution. Dr. Jay is a friend of the show, and it does my heart well to see him there, although I will admit my blood pressure is going through the roof just reliving all the evil crap that was done to us during COVID in this country.
Oh my gosh, Jesse, thank you. Yes, I'm friends with Jay as well, and I hadn't seen it yet, so thank you. I'm glad to have seen it. He's exactly right. If science is based on good science, good facts, good information, and we present it to people, most people will love to follow those recommendations. It will be very few who don't, but we didn't see that during COVID. We saw inaccurate methodologies, we saw rushed processes, and we saw forced heavy decisions, a heavy hand on forcing people to do what the government wanted. So I'm glad to hear him say all of the opposite of that. And the American people will be much better served with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya as directing the NIH.
Yeah, they sure will. Doctor, can you help me understand, in your own words, the why about whatever you just said, about all those things you just said? Why were things rushed? Why was it so different? I mean, why did we turn so tyrannical all of a sudden? Because prior to COVID, most Americans, the vast majority, had such a high opinion of America's medical institutions and doctors and things like that. And you look at public opinion polls now, it's not good. Why? How did they blow it all so badly?
Thank you. That's such an important question. So first of all, yes, being a physician is a very honorable thing to do with one's life. My father was a doctor. Doctors all over the world, they go on mission trips. We really just want to help people. You're really not attracted to that as a profession if that's not your orientation. So what has gone wrong in the medical system? We have moved completely away from the doctor-patient relationship. So I have noticed that really every year of being a doctor in comparison to my father's time. I grew up with a dad. I used to go with him to the hospitals and the nursing homes, and we had an office in our house. I know exactly how medicine used to be practiced. It was very much a focus on the patient. The patient would need something or have a question or need some help, and my dad would be there for the patient. That was the basis of the whole relationship. And we've moved away from that year after year after year. There's tremendous financial incentives to corporatize medicine because there's a lot of money to be made by people who are not doctors and people who are not patients. So we started getting away from the doctor as small business owner, and we made the doctor just an employee, just a widget in kind of a big machine. I actually call it the medical industrial complex, which is a combination of legacy healthcare, like the big insurance companies, and big pharma. So that's really the legacy healthcare system. And there's so much money to be made by people all along the way that the doctor-patient relationship has really been lost. And actually, for me as a doctor, it's pretty heartbreaking. Now, I fought this as long as I could. In the system, I was very much an insider. I was working in the ERs for over 20 years, board-certified emergency physician. And I saw the encroachment of the payers and the Medicare and the policies, but I always did what I needed to do for the patient in front of me, right? I'd work around the system. I'd find little cheats, little workarounds, right? But during COVID, The government made it impossible for me to take care of the patient. They made it impossible. Specifically, the California Medical Board threatened me and all doctors in California that if I prescribed early treatment medicine for a patient, I could lose my doctor's license. This was unheard of, unprecedented, totally illegal, outrageous. And as you know, I'm a lawyer, and I really responded as a lawyer would respond. And I said, no, hell no, you are not going to tell me what I can and can't do as a doctor. I am licensed as an individual. We are not licensed as a corporation. We're licensed as individuals. And that was when I saw that the infrastructure for medical tyranny was just totally embedded in our system, right? Because to be a doctor, I needed to have my medical license. And the people giving me my medical license, granting me my medical license, were state bureaucrats who were telling me I couldn't actually practice. That was part of the tyranny. Another part were the payers, right? Medicare. If you had Medicare and you went into the hospital with COVID, the hospital got more money if they put you on remdesivir than if they put you on ivermectin. They actually got thousands of dollars more. They couldn't give you ivermectin and not give you remdesivir and take all those extra payments. So Medicare policies were set. So the hospitals were being financially incentivized by Medicare to do things that were not in the patient's interest. And these are just some of the problems that we face. There was big pharma, legacy media, the healthcare insurance industry. Really, it's quite difficult. So that this is my mission is to free the patient from kind of the medical industrial complex.
Yeah. Speaking of that complex, Dr. Marty Makary, hopefully our new head of the FDA, here he was.
Do you think we need to evaluate the people on the committees or see whether they get royalties or see whether or not there are conflict of interest for the people making these decisions?
Yes, I do, Senator. We need to review the ethics policy because people see things that appear to be a cozy relationship between industry and the regulators that are supposed to be regulating the products. Now, I want American companies to thrive. I want life sciences companies to thrive, but we need to call balls and strikes and to keep that independent scientific review process free of any conflicts. So I do think it deserves a look.
Doctor, the FDA, how much work can Dr. Marty do? Because he's got a whole spider web to untangle. You touched on some of it already.
There's so much to do at the FDA. I want to orient your viewers and you to kind of a big way to look at it. So during COVID, one of the ways I knew that the government was lying is they were saying that this safe drug, hydroxychloroquine, wasn't safe. Now, and they were saying that it wasn't effective. So the FDA was in the business of safety and efficacy. And I submit to you, they should not be in the efficacy business. That safety is the only business the FDA should be in. The FDA should have the right to say, this drug can't come to an American market unless we deem it safe. I think that's a valid role for an honest government. What is not valid for the government is to put its thumb on the scale of what is effective. It turned out the government was incentivized by big pharma to say hydroxychloroquine wasn't effective. So when they started talking about that, people were listening. It happened to be false, but they were suppressing us from bringing the data to that it was effective. But if we took a step back and the FDA wasn't allowed to even comment on efficacy, but only on safety, that in and of itself would be a huge improvement. I don't need a nanny state deciding for me what's most effective. I'd rather either do the research myself or find an honest doctor who can help me do that. When they are given the permission to say this is effective or that's not effective, this is where we run into trouble. This is why inexpensive treatments are often not being released to the public. Ivermectin, fenbendazole, mebendazole, those things appear, and Laetrile, appear to be effective for cancer treatments. But you're having the FDA say, oh, it's not effective. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in the FDA's opinion on efficacy. I really hope Dr. Makary just looks at it from that position, that the FDA, the government, should not be in that business. Let the free market decide what's effective. Isn't that an interesting idea?
Do you view it, obviously it's a conflict of interest, but how do we get big pharma reps off of the FDA? It's this endless tunnel back and forth where they'll leave this and they'll go there, then they'll come back here. It's this whole ugly system where everybody's incentivized to just take care of the big pharma companies. Can we break that up?
Yeah, this is a really difficult problem because people work for the FDA and then they leave the FDA position and then they go work for big pharma, and they know that in advance when they're sitting in their FDA jobs. So a lot of people left. Steve Hahn is the one I remember the most. He left the Trump administration. He then went on to become the head of the financial arm of Moderna. And this just happens all the time. This is called regulatory capture, where the big pharma industry is capturing or controlling the regulatory agency that's supposed to be supervising it. It's a huge, huge problem. Listen, Bobby Kennedy is very aware of this as a problem. This was a big subject in his book. So he knows of the problem, and we hope for the best. We have the right leadership to try to unwind this regulatory capture, and let's hope we do.
Dr. Gold, you were awesome. Come back soon. I appreciate you very much. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.